In this video, I'll show you how to photograph autumn leaves and create unique macro and close-up compositions. I know it's hard to come up with something new when you photograph the same subject as hundreds of photographers around you. If this is your first time on my channel, my name is Peter and I'm a nature photographer. If we share the same interest and you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit the like button. After watching this video, please subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell. Also, drop me a comment if you have any questions. I appreciate your support in helping me build this channel and share my passion for nature photography. Now, let's emerge into autumn leaves photography and find out how to make the most of this amazing subject. When you capture a macro or close-up photograph of autumn leaves, there's a temptation to place the leaf right in the middle of a frame. Although it's important to have a strong focal point, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the center of the photo. Apply the rule of thirds or the golden rule of composition. Work with negative space and leading lines. A good example of leading lines could be the veins that you can see in the leaf. Macro and close-up photography allows you to focus at a very short distance. Thus, you can easily fill the frame with just the leaf's surface or the texture and focus of maybe just one of the details you spot. For example, it could be a spot of a different color or the veins in the leaves. If you can't focus that close, you may consider creating composition with textures where you, instead of photographing just a single leaf, you can fill the frame with a surface covered with similar leaves. And because autumn leaves are so colorful and diverse, the effect can be really beautiful. It's also important to vary your composition technique as much as possible and experiment. But remember that the autumn leaves should be the first thing that the viewer sees in your photos. So let's move on to depth of field. From a technical point of view, creating a composition with textures relies heavily on the depth of field. When you have a single subject and make it want to stand out, I usually use a shallower depth of field. This way the leaf is in focus and the background is blurred. A shallow depth of field adds the sense of depth and separates the subject from the background. But a macro lens at the minimum focus distance and with a wide aperture can sometimes create too narrow a focus that doesn't cover the entire leaf. And especially if you want to capture texture of the leaf, then you have to make sure that the focus area doesn't become too narrow. Then you either have to close the aperture a bit down or step back from the subject, both being methods for increasing the depth of field. Now, when I want to create a composition with textures, I need a wider depth of field, which means closing down the aperture. However, this reduces the amount of light entering the camera and it forces you to decrease the ISO or slow down the shutter speed. Especially for capturing the texture in leaves, I find that a tripod is very useful in these scenarios. A tip that improves the quality of your autumn leaves photography considerably is considering the background. If the background is too busy, it will distract the viewer's attention away from the subject. The subject will seem less important. The same thing happens if the background is too similar with the subject. What you want is a background that complements the subject and makes it stand out a bit. For example, a saturated blue sky may be the perfect background for a yellow leaf because it creates a strong color contrast. Dark and featureless tree bark may be a good background for a textured leaf composition. So change the position of the camera until you find a good background. And if you can't find a good one, choose the furthest background away from you, so you at least can use a shallow depth of field to hide the background. So let's move on to lighting. Leaves and backlighting goes very well together. And this is because that most leaves are thin enough to let the light get through and create a dramatic transition effect. When they are backlit, the veins of the leaf stands out and the colors become brighter and more vivid. Furthermore, with the source of light behind the subject, the background also looks better. If you use a deep depth of field, you'll have a brighter and more detailed background. If you use a shallow depth of field, you can create a beautiful bouquet effect. As I said before, I like to try each photo setup with different types of composition. Backlighting goes very well with both one leaf in the frame and with a considerable part of the autumn foliage. If sunlight isn't enough to help you achieve a backlighting shine-through effect, then you can actually use an artificial light source, such as an external flash unit or a LED light. Now, I find LED lights much easier to set up and position when it comes to backlighting a subject. Moreover, I can see how the scene will be lit before I press the shutter. And in this way, I can adapt camera settings and increase my chances of a good photo. Also, I suggest that you look out for water droplets on leaves. If you go for a walk an early morning or just after the rain in the autumn, then take the camera with you. Macro photography allows you to capture tiny details, such as dewdrops and raindrops. They kind of act like a magnifying lens and make the veins of the leaves underneath them more visible. At the same time, water drops add three-dimensionality and improves the compositional balance sometimes. However, pay attention to reflections. The drop's surface should be clear and transparent. For this type of composition, you typically want front lighting. I hope this video and these few tips will help you improve your autumn leaves photography and create more interesting compositions. For any questions, feel free to drop me a comment. Remember, if you found this video useful, please don't forget to like it and subscribe to my channel. Also, if you're new to macro photography, I suggest that you watch my video on 7 macro photography tips for beginners. See you in the next video.